Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girvaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Ramuna Iravanachari Iravanacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihara Radha Madhava Kunja Vihara Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Jan Yashodanandana Brajajana Jan Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhi Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhi Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. A special welcome to our devotees joining us online. So today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Canto 5, the Trade of Impetus, Chapter 8, the character of Bharat Maharaj, text 12. So we'll read 11, just the translation in the Sanskrit and the translation. Then we'll do the full reading of text 12. Yeah. Text 11. So this is in prose. Thakur Prabhu has posted the verse as well in the group chat. Thank you, Prabhu. Vitikrita Nishanga asana, Shayanatana, Snana shana dishu, Sahamrigu jahuna, Snehanubhadha, Hridaya asit. Translation. Due to attachment for the deer, Maharaj Bharat lay down with it, walked about with it, bathed with it, and even ate with it. Thus, his heart became bound to the deer in affection. Text 12. Kusha kusuma samit balasha hala mulodha khan nyaharishyamano vikasala vikadibhyo bhayam asham samano yada saha harina kunakaina vanang samavishati. Kusha, a kind of grass required for ritualistic ceremonies. Kusuma, flowers. Samit, firewood. Palasha, leaves. Mula, fruits and roots. Udakani, and water. Harishyamanaha, desiring to collect. Rika, sala, rika, from wolves and dogs. Adibyaha, and other animals, such as tigers. Bhayam, fear. Ashang, samanaha, outing. Yada, when. Saha, with. Harina, guna. Kena, the deer calf. Vanam, the forest. Sama, vishati, enters. Translation. When Maharaj Bharata wanted to enter the forest to collect kusha grass, flowers, wood, leaves, fruits, roots, and water, he would fear that dogs, jackals, tigers, and other ferocious animals might kill the deer. He would therefore always take the deer with him when entering the forest. Purport. By Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. How Maharaj Bharat increased his affection for the deer is described herein. Even such an exalted personality as Bharat Maharaj, who had attained loving affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, fell down from his position due to his affection for some animal. Consequently, as will be seen, he had to accept the body of a deer in his next life. Since this was the case with Bharat Maharaj, what can we say of those who are not advanced in spiritual life, but who became attached to cats and dogs? Due to their affection for their cats and dogs, they have to take the same bodily forms in the next life, unless they clearly increase their affection and love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Due to their next life, due to their affection for their cats and dogs, they have to take the same bodily forms in the next life, unless they clearly increase their affection and love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless we increase our faith in the Supreme Lord, we shall be attracted to many other things. That is the cause of our material bondage. Text again. When Maharaj Bharat wanted to enter the forest to collect kusha grass, flowers, wood, leaves, fruits, roots, and water, he would fear that dogs, jackals, tigers, and other ferocious animals might kill the deer. He would therefore always take the deer with him when entering the forest. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitangena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Teshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this verse, you're hearing about Moha and Maha Moha, how the network of bondage increases due to material affection. So in Maharaj Bharat's case, as has been established by the previous speakers, his fall down is very unique, uh, and it's a lesson for all of us. So generally speaking, as Prabhupada is writing here, the cause of material bondage is due to material affection. But the cause of Maharaj Bharat, from an exalted position, becoming affectionate to a deer, is a lesson in that even if one gets to the level of bhava, which is the preliminary stage to pure love of Krishna, still one has to hold on tight to the association of devotees. That is actually the wealth of a devotee. That is the main shelter of our practice, executing the regulative principles of devotional service in the association of devotees, because there is still a smidgen, small trace amount of anartha, unwanted things in the heart. And so those get, so the heart gets completely purified when one actually reaches Krishna. Yeah. So I'd just like to pull up a verse here. Um, this is Lord Brahma speaking in the third canto about Moha and Maha Moha. Basically, Lord Brahma, in his service to recreate the universe, he created 5 layers of ignorance to cover the living entity. And so, from this, we can deduce that um, these unwanted things in the heart, they run very deep, deep to the false ego. And as Prabhupada explains in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that affection for matter, enjoying separately from the Lord. So, this idea of having a separatist mentality to the Lord's service, that me continuing in my devotional service as it has been given. So, in the case of Maharaj Bharat, he was supposed to execute regulative principles of basically withdrawing. Um, so, this is called pratyahara, technically. And basically, to actually achieve complete withdrawal of the senses, you need to, you practice pranayama, and you progressively eat less and less and less. And so what you're basically doing is you are winding up the material elements into themselves. Um, so you're basically reversing the process of creation. So this is a technical process, but really this is how it's going on. So is that the earth element, that's the shelter of all material elements, and you wind up earth into water, and then you take that and then you wind water into fire, and then fire, you wind it into air, and then air into ether, ether into the mind, and then the mind into the intelligence, and then the intelligence in the false ego. And then once it's fully wound up, then you're completely liberated. So there is a process. Ashtanga Yoga describes this. And even when you read about the austerities that Dhritarashtra also executed in the last stage of his life after the battlefield of Kurukshetra, this is what was going on as well. Uh, so this winding up is built in to the process of devotional service. And so until you reach Krishna Prema, the false ego is still active. And so Lord Brahma describes some of the characteristics that have been coded into the false ego. So let's just read about what Lord Brahma says. Okay. So this is actually, this is Lord Kapiladev speaking to his mother about the process of creation. This is from third canto, text, chapter 20, text 18. First of all, Brahma created from his shadow the coverings of ignorance of the conditioned souls. They are 5 in number and are called Tamisra, Anda Tamisra, Tamas, Moha, and Maha Moha. So it follows that reaching the stage of Jivan Mukta, being liberated, even though one is still in a material body, is actually a very special special stage of advancement. However, one can still fall down from this kind of liberation. And then secondly is that even when one is on the level of bhava, there is still some material conditions there. And so the way one mitigates this is by remaining in the association of devotees, as we've said. So Prabhupada proceeds to describe all these different types of coverings. First condition is a covering of tamisra, or anger. Constitutionally, each and every living entity has minute independence. It is misuse of that minute independence for the conditioned soul to think that he can also enjoy like the Supreme Lord, or to think, why shall I not be free? Why shall I not be a free enjoyer like the Supreme Lord? So basically, this is rebellion. So Prabhupada says it's anger. So this mentality of anger towards the Supreme Lord, or rebellion to the Lord, is basically wanting to do your own thing, as they say. Just do you, uh, your own truth, etc. So yeah, so this basically leaving the shelter of the regulative principles of devotional service, and wanting to do you, wanting to be free like the Supreme Enjoyer. It's due to this type of covering. So regulative principles, what they actually do when one actually thinks about it, or what the false ego, the way in which the false ego would like you to think about regulative principles, is that it's somebody else imposing their will on your life. And so you have a natural resistance. It's like being shackled. Just like, um, sometimes you see athletes as well wanting to break out of contracts, musicians, they feel restricted. Oh, they don't like my content. I wrote this song, but they say it won't sell, so I have to add in some, lyrics I don't want to sing about. Um, so people breaking out due to this anger is Tamisra. And what is under Tamisra? And Prabhupada, okay, actually still talking about Tamisra. Even in the field of spiritual realization, this Tamisra mentality of the living entity is hard to overcome. In trying to get out of the entanglement of material life, there are many who want to be one with the Supreme. Even in their transcendental activities, this low-grade mentality of Tamisra continues. So it's difficult. So it basically, Tamisra, it's basically an activation of your minute independence. You feel that this is the only way I can express my independence, by feeling this anger, or and rebelling against the regulative principles set forth by the Lord to actually give you shelter from his formidable material energy. Next, Prabhupada goes on to describe Andata Misra. Andata Misra involves considering death to be the ultimate end. The atheists generally think that the body is the self and that everything is therefore ended with the end of the body. So for material affection to be possible, for Maharaj Bharat to see this deer as um, as his only source of shelter, this mentality has to be there to actually have this trace idea that, okay, tigers, jackals, and dogs would actually kill the deer, and that would be the end of the deer. So I just saw the mother was drinking from the water, and she leapt out of the water, and she had a premature birth of this deer cub, and she ran away. She couldn't go back out of fear of being killed, and so she went away. And so it is my duty to give shelter to this deer cub because, um, yes, because its mother ran away out of fear of death, and so I'm going to give it that shelter from the fear of death so that it shouldn't feel death. It shouldn't actually die. So this fear of death is this under Tamisra. Certainly, it is not easy to face death. Um, we have seen uh, devotees leave their body. And devotees, in the end, the death is quite glorious. However, the preliminary conditions leading up to that final stage, you see that there's a struggle. There's one can't chant, um, so it's difficult. And what to speak of persons who don't have the shelter of the holy name, shelter of the devotees, and shelter of Krishna Gyan, knowledge about Krishna. If there's no shelter like that, then one actually thinks that death is the ultimate. And I was what Kudruma Gora Prabhu was, he sent me a video of of somebody having adopted a cow as a pet. So, like, how one would keep a dog in your house. So, similarly, this person actually kept a cow and was, as big as a Bahulashra. It was a longhorn, Texas longhorn. So he had actually quite long horns, even at, the age of 1 year. And he just learned how to maneuver through the house, entering through doorways, you just tilt your head this way, that way. And you can see even in the video, the owner gives a popcorn, they're watching a movie together, and he's just sitting there uh, in the living room watching a movie with the owner. So just like fully grown. So obviously the question is, when the video is clean, there's no cow poop. So the question is, how does she actually manage the cow poop in the house? And I don't know. It appears that this cow is might be potty trained. So definitely would have to give us tips on that because if you could potty train a cow, the you could just get them to come into the barn, and that way it would be easy to collect a lot of cow poop. You could make biogas, etc., because you could just collect it in one place. But due to this material affection, such a thing was possible that, okay, on the positive side, hey, I'm demonstrating that a cow can be trained. But this is the question is that, okay, you might not have material affection as a sadhaka. Your affection for maybe your cats and dogs might have been relieved. But now you come into Girinagri and we are, working with large animals. And Krishna also in Krishna Lila, he has animals. And so the same animals you're seeing on the farm are the same animals in Goloka. So, you might think, well, it seems bona fide to actually have affection for cows, bona fide to have affection for peacocks. So why can't I protect these animals like Maharaj Bharat did? So, for example, there's peacocks, there's younger peacocks that are flying off to the neighbors. Godrumagora, he had peacocks on his house. Neighbor as well on Groninger Valley posted on Facebook that, hey, if anyone, you know, isn't the owner of these peacocks, can I keep them? So it appears that the peacocks are running from, a specific predator. Um, because in the 5 years I've been here, and Dhruva Maharaj Prabhu and Parijata Dev were telling me they haven't seen this, that the peacocks just going such great distances. So it's not just out of curiosity, there is a cause. So one might say that can't I just, adopt them, keep them, you know, protect them from ferocious, uh, there might be a fox, there might even be a coyote on the prowl. Um, and sometimes, yeah, when you're walking in the lower fields, you do see some feathers, some broken wings, etc. You can see that a peacock met its end in this park. So similarly as well, with Bahulashva, the youngest member of the family, you might feel that way, that yes, I need to give him protection. But the whole thing is that you have to do it according to regulative principles. You have to do it through Krishna's way, Krishna's system. So devotees do show affection for all living entities, but there's a specific way that you do it. And so um, this Andata Mishra is a obstacle from actually following Krishna's system. Arjuna also, he had this difficulty as well, seeing, considering death as bad, as a bad thing. He didn't actually want to fight. Uh, he didn't see how he would be able to enjoy the kingdom, because in the process of acquiring a kingdom, we will kill so many relatives, so we will feel the burden from that. And after acquisition of the kingdom, there won't be any relatives to actually enjoy the kingdom with. And so, considering death to be the ultimate end, it's the end of all enjoyment, for enjoying the kingdom. So it's a bit of an indirect way, but it's still basically that mentality to consider death to be a non-starter. You can't enjoy uh, if there's the presence of death. Therefore, let me just avoid the whole thing or do it my way. So Maharaj Bharat had this. We can see in this verse that's really what he's explaining. This under Tamisra, ignorance is due to tamas. The condition of not knowing about the spirit soul is called tamas. So when there's forgetfulness, uh, so the devotees, the shelter of the devotees, the sadhu sangha, reminds us of knowledge of the spirit soul. So in this forgetfulness of the spirit soul, that there's actually the super soul in this body, in the body of the deer, body of the cow, body of the peacocks. When there's that forgetfulness, then the natural conclusion is to think that, yes, I have to give the body of this poor animal protection. Cows, they are just gentle creatures. And, they would never be able to protect themselves from any kind of predator. Even with their horns, they wouldn't be able to stand back. All you need is just one object, and you start waving it around, and then the cows just like shut their eyes closed because they think it's like a horn, a sharp object. And as soon as they shut their eyes closed, they are just basically sitting ducks. They are very fearful, and so they, obey what you say. So that's just their nature. So with this mentality of Andata Misra, um, the way we are giving them protection, them sitting in the Goshala during the winter time, it seems like we're not giving them true affection. We should put blankets on them, and we should have a heating system in the Goshala. But Krishna already has thought of that. The cows produce more body heat. then um, yeah, they're able to produce a lot of body heat. And so as long as you protect them from wind chill, they're actually quite fine. But persons who come, they can't understand this because there isn't this knowledge. So that's just a real platform, just in terms of understanding the biology of the body of a cow. So when you go deeper as well, is that, well, if a cow is dying, you do all that you can to protect it. Um, but ultimately, you should know that, yes, this was a devotee offering its milk in service to Radha Damodar. Um, the spirit soul will be benefited. And so, yes, I mustn't lament. Then, then Prabhupada writes, actually, the conditioned souls in ignorance in this material world, so in tamas, are simply guided by sex life. And as soon as they get the opportunity for sex life, they become attached to so-called home, motherland, children, wealth, and opulence. As these attachments increase, moha, or the illusion of the bodily concept of life, also increases. Okay. So here, Prabhupada is saying that the activator for moha, for attachments, the illusion of the bodily concept of life, this is what moha is, it increases from sex life. And sex life is activated by tamas, ignorance of the knowledge, forgetfulness of the knowledge of, forgetfulness of the spirit soul and knowledge about the spirit soul. So even in the even when there's an absence of physical sex life, um, if there's this under tamisra, fearfulness that death is the ultimate end, tamas comes in. So there's tamisra, under tamisra, and tamas. So ignorance. So the false ego, the ingredients of the false ego as a appellative, it's actually base tamas. It's just ignorance. That's what it is. And then from the false ego, so it's a combination of ignorance, the time element, and then you get the false ego. And then you take the false ego, and then you add the time element, and then you get sorry, then sorry, you take the mode of sorry, you take the mode of goodness, you add the time element, and then you get the mind. Then you take the mode of passion, you get the time element, and you get ignorance, intelligence. Right? So even though the mind, the building block of the mind is goodness, it's downstream from the false ego. And so the false ego can influence the mind. And then the actual body, the physical senses, so the knowledge acquiring senses, the ability to see, to touch, to taste, to smell, and the ability to hold on to objects, to walk. That's a combination of, that's made from ignorance, and you add in the time element as well. And so, and so basically what you're seeing, our body is a sandwich of ignorance. So there's there's a spirit soul that's the next door neighbor to the false ego, your conception of who you think you are. So all that is built up on this tamas, forgetfulness of the spirit soul. So it's a wall. There has to be a wall in order for you to actually participate in the affairs of this world. And then, and then at the end, in terms of the front end, what you're doing with your body, that interface, it's ignorance. That's its building. So it's a sandwich of ignorance, basically. And so there's a forgetfulness of the spirit soul. And so even if you are not engaged in physical sex anymore, like Maharaj Bharat, um, they can be an activation of this layer of ignorance, moha, illusion of the bodily concept of life. So even in the higher stages of bhakti, it can be observed that, such as in bhava, the preliminary stage of Krishna prema, that you can think that this deer, whatever other animal you see, you can think that this is the end for the deer, and therefore I have to give it shelter, just as Maharaj Bharat thought. So you can come up with a justification to be in this illusion. And we won't go into details, but we've also observed as well in our society as well, highly experienced uh, devotees who've been practicing for decades. This does happen. So when I asked my Guru Maharaj about this, citing this example of Maharaj Bharat, um, yes, this is a characteristic of getting to Krishna Prema, is that as long as one hasn't aroused pure affection and love for the Supreme Lord and established at that stage of advancement, one has to remain in the association of devotees. Otherwise, these layers of ignorance, they can be activated, even in the absence of sex life. So Prabhupada proceeds and he says, that's the idea that I am this body and everything belonging to this body is mine also increases. And as the whole world is put into moha, sectarian societies, families, and nationalities are created. They fight with one another. Mahamoha means to be mad after material enjoyment. So one is thus reasoning, their very reasoning, whatever they see is based on this illusion of this body. So I see other bodies, I see restrictions and constraints. I have to give those bodies protection. I see other bodies as being very confrontational with me, and therefore I perceive them as the enemy. I have a specific political viewpoint, and so people with an opposite political viewpoint, um, they are the enemy. So if you're conservative, liberals are the enemy, or if you're liberal, conservatives are the enemy. Um, and so in this way, once you are thinking this way, then the mode of passion kicks in. You living like this every single day, it's building, and you actually become, quote, mad after this way of enjoying. So you think that, going to the beginning, you think that Tamisra, that you have rebelled against the Supreme Lord. Under Tamisra, you think that death is the end. So you just are in a state of existential fear that I can be killed. My dependents, people related to my body can be killed. People in my group can be killed. Um, and then you see other people as the enemy that are, confrontational with you. And then there's Tamas. You thinking that, yes, because death is the end, um, yeah, this whole talks of spirit soul and enjoying going to a spiritual world, that's actually the illusion. The real thing is the work right down here on this planet. And then moha, um, yes, I am this body. This is what I see. I'm what I can see. And therefore, yes, I have to do as much as I can to protect all that I can see within my purview and within my scope of influence. Yes, and so in this way, this material affection just increases. So at the time of death, you think about your loved ones, your family members, mother, father, sister, brother, your wife, your children, and you get a body like theirs. Uh, Mainly there will be like a main object of your affection. And so you think like uh, you become attached to that, you go to your next life, and then you're surrounded by, you get that body, and in this way, the identification continues. And so you become mad, literally. You become crazy. And there's people who've perfected Mahamoha. You see them becoming mass shooters. Uh, you see them becoming suicide bombers. Um, some persons, they've been tricked into thinking that if I just undergo a surgery, then yes, my problems in life will be solved. So if I just do this, change my genitalia, um, then my problems will be solved. And yes, there's people who are pushing this agenda and then people who get captivated by it. But ultimately, this is madness, as described and as defined here. This Maha Moha, it's not clinical madness or clinical insanity like schizophrenia, but really it's a complete skewed view of things as they are. And so it does happen as well. Um, we're seeing it here in Maharaj Bharat's case. And so we should pray to the Supreme Lord, we should pray to Radha Damodar, that we can have the shelter of their service. The Lord, as we know, he is uh, he has this characteristic of being surrounded by loving devotees. And so if we stay fixed in our service to the lotus feet of Radha Damodar, then that comes with the shelter of the devotees. And so if we remain, we pray like this today and every day, that can I just remain fixed in your loving service? Can I remain underneath the shelter of your service? And in this way, I'll actually have all that I need. Because if you're in if you're in the association of devotees, they will see you go astray and they'll be like, hey, snap out of it. I think you might be in tamas. Are you forgetful that you're not this body? You're showing a lot of affection for chocolate, a lot of affection for other things that, and they are basically maybe they might be causing you to put on weight or causing you to not be able to sleep on time. So there's always different symptoms. We always have some hang up, but in the association of devotees, they can cause us to wake up. So the hang up might be due to the tongue, or it might be due to a mentality. And the devotees can just say, hey, I think we need to snap out of it. Hare Krishna. Are there any reflections, comments, contentions?
Hare
Well,
Krishna.
there's like Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yeah, there's a question. I guess it's a sarcastic question from Sarvatma Prabhu. What's wrong with being in love with prasadam chocolate? Well, you have to see it, Like for me personally, I have to offer obeisances to chocolate from a distance because it really throws my tongue into a tailspin. Like as soon as my tongue touches that substance, like the whole day is can't stop eating. So I don't know. For some persons, it doesn't throw you into a tailspin, but yeah, you just got to know what activates the tamas, and for me, chocolate really activates the tamas. Hare Krishna Taraka Prabhu. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank
Well,
you for a nice class. It's nice to hear about the 5 layers of coverings, the 5 coverings of ignorance. Don't hear about that too often. So that was Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 20th chapter, text 18, right? Lord Brahma has cast off various layers of covering, and so from his shadow, these 5 coverings were generated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything of substance to add, but I enjoyed hearing about those 5 layers of coverings. They should have probably explained sometimes in minute detail various aspects of how we are entangled in material existence, and similarly, he goes sometimes into minute details about aspects of spiritual life. There are so many very fine details and names for everything, variations of names with shades of differences of meaning. It's a wonderful thing that regardless of the depth of your intelligence, you will never be able to come to a point at which you can't find new subject matter to absorb and stimulate your intellect. You can dive as deeply as you like and wrap your head around more and more details of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and never really reach an end. It's a very, very deep and vast ocean. So limitless potential for engaging our mind and intellect. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for that contribution. Yes, my conviction is that just as we have the public internet, all this content we've been given by Prabhupada and his faithful followers, we certainly can create a Krishna conscious public internet that the whole network, each node, each link to a page is just all Krishna conscious content. Spiritualizing the whole public internet as it is would be difficult unless we achieve the parity in society as Prabhupada set the target, and that is if 10% of the world's population became Krishna conscious, then you would have Vaikuntha. So, yeah, if we could, that's the way to do it. We certainly can do it with Govardhan Samskar, the technology of Govardhan Samskar. But in the meantime, if we, just had this whole world online where it's just like Krishna conscious content all the way without navigating all the, Tamasic, under Tamasic, Tamasic, Moha, and Mahamoha content. Certainly what you're saying could be visible for everybody. And in this way, yeah, the intelligence can just swim deep and deeper and deeper in this Krishna Gyana. Any other contributions?
Hey, with regards to prasadam chocolate, chocolate was for actually decades of the history of Srila Prabhupada's movement. Early in the movement, devotees strictly avoided chocolate because it was widely believed that chocolate contained caffeine, which we regard as an intoxicant, and so we stay away from that. Later, it was argued that, in fact, chocolate does not contain caffeine, or whatever caffeine is there is so minute it's insignificant, and As far as I'm aware, the chocolate controversy is still raging on amongst some. There are some that are okay with it. Some devotees will offer chocolate. Some devotees strictly stay away from it. And we don't have any, to my knowledge, there is no definitive conclusion about the status of chocolate, whether it's really acceptable or not. But lots of opinions, different people have different opinions, and research has been done by various devotees that have come to different conclusions. I don't know. My attitude is when in doubt, do without. I personally don't take any chances. You know, if there's any question about this or that, I just stay away from it. So personally, I don't accept chocolate, but maybe it's okay. I don't know for sure. I don't know. So, you know, I don't need chocolate. I can do it. I've been doing nicely without it for a long time. So, you know, I don't care. My diet's pretty simple. I don't need chocolate, but I don't know. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's fine. I have no idea. So Ram has got some comments. Hare Krishna.
Haribo Prabhu.
Just a couple of things that I heard or witnessed about chocolate. I also underwent the same austerity as other devotees of not having chocolate for, several decades. And a devotee who was, I believe, the first devotee to go to Trinidad, Sura Shrestha, Prabhupada sent him there, and he sent a letter to Prabhupada asking a series of questions. Can we wear leather boots because he was working in the fields? Can do tilling and flip-flops. And one of the questions was, what about chocolate? Because in Trinidad they grow cocoa. And Prabhupada says no cocoa. And there is yet some controversy there that Prabhupada wasn't given by the secretary the explanation that the cocoa wasn't the coca leaf from Bolivia to make cocaine. It was the cocoa plant that contains theobromine, not caffeine, which is actually quite marginal and fractional. And then I heard Madri, Tamal Krishna Maharaja's ex-wife. She told me personally, and the letter from Sura Shrestha I saw personally as well, the original. And Madri said, I made chocolate ice cream in Hawaii for Prabhupada. He was told what it was, he ate it, and he liked it. So there you have it, both spectrums, both relating to Srila Prabhupada. One, no cocoa. The other one, I love chocolate ice cream. So you take what you want. I don't think it's the same as some more controversial item that is forbidden for Vaishnavas. This is a question of choice. I don't have a conclusion. I just have some tidbits of information that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for sharing. Yes, the politics around food, ahimsa dairy, not having access to ahimsa dairy, what should we do? Certainly, this requires us to apply our intelligence. There's so many items in terms of offering nice bhoga to the Supreme Lord for his, satisfaction, and what some items which aren't explicitly stated as chocolate is not explicitly stated as forbidden, how to actually navigate this. So yes, this is rather we absorb ourselves in this discussion than in other things flying around on the public internet.
One thing I can say in defense of chocolate is that it totally eliminates the craving for carob.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for this. On that note, let us, yes, pray to Radha Damodar to help us with all of our cravings that may increase our moha. Rantaraj, oh, last, okay. Jiva Pandit, Prabhu. Jiva Pandit.
No, it's the wrong JP.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, Jagannath Pandit, Prabhu. Oh, Hare Krishna.
yeah. Usually I don't have JPD up, but
Oh,
you know, I was some of the things you were saying today made me remember something from your Guru Maharaj's class, and he was saying how because you were talking at some point you were talking about polarities and the basically the binding power of ignorance and the three modes. And your Guru Maharaj made a point that if we embrace any aspect of the duality, then we also are, we will get the other aspect of the duality.
Mm.
And in this world, we see so much creation of all these, you know, various social or cultural constructs that are often taught or in the form of dualities. You know, you mentioned the political spectrum, for example. You know, you have your conservative and your liberal. Well, most people would put themselves in one or the other rather than being independent or outside of that construct, you know, and you go from one thing to another, all these dualities, you know, happiness and distress, uh, friends and enemies, love and hate, you know. So people live in these constructs, you know, without spiritual knowledge. And still, even with spiritual knowledge, it can still be very challenging to not be affected by these things, you know, because of our unconscious identification, you know, our upadis, you know, and so on. So, although vidya, gyan is important, but it's not enough actually, because we have to have vigyan, realize knowledge, and be situated in transcendental consciousness. But it was interesting also because I remember Hridayananda Maharaj was mentioning that I don't know where the verse was, but he was mentioning avidya ya, and he was saying that how we can't. He gave an example that you cannot enjoy an apple from looking at the reflection of an apple and trying to enjoy it, and that's what we're doing in this material world if we're trying to enjoy the material world. So he was saying you can't enjoy the reflection of love, nor the reflection of what appears to be what life is with all these constructs, material constructs. So applied knowledge, helping us situate ourselves beyond the modes, helps us transcend the modes. It really takes some application, constant application. And I was thinking how the process, the real purification beyond is the love and the devotion that we give to Krishna and his devotees, because that takes us outside of anything material. It's not dependent on anything. Love and devotion is not dependent on anything but our desire to please Krishna. So then the more we do that and the more we're absorbed in that, then the consciousness becomes purified and we can transcend those modes. Anyway, just a comment.
Thank you so much for that wonderful comment. Thank you. Thank you, dear devotees. That marks the end of our Bhagavatam class, and I wish you a day free of tamas, moha, and maha moha. Control Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Go Pramanande Haribo.